everybody, and welcome once again to Down to Hell. And we are very delighted to have not one but two guests with us tonight. Go 2 weeks without a guest, and then, like London buses, two come along at once. They are the co-presenters of an excellent true crime podcast called Generation Y. Or I should say this in my best Stewie voice.
You should. Why?
Generation
Why? Cool whip.
Cool whip. Cool hip.
Whip.
Cool hip. But it is Generation WHY, not Generation Letter Y, which is a true crime podcast. And to introduce them, they are with the beard, Justin. And without the beard, Aaron, Justin Evans and Aaron Abel. Guys, welcome aboard, and thank you so much for being here.
Hey guys.
Steph's really the reason why you're here tonight.
I am. This is purely selfish on my part.
How long have you been listening?
Since the very beginning.
Since the very beginning.
Totally. Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
Which is 2012, 9 years, and if I've got the count correct, 446 episodes ago.
Yep. As I posted the other day on my Instagram, I said, and it's absolutely true, and you know it to be true, the amount of true crime podcasts that I have listened to, and many have come and many have gone, and they've always been there. Never, there's very few podcasts that have remained since they came out, and there's yours and Dan Zapansky's.
Yeah. True Murder. Yeah. He was number one. We were number two, apparently.
Second, and
right. He was in for, so you were the second true crime.
Well,
podcast.
Dan sort of Dan's thing was interviewing authors, correct? That's what he started doing at first. He wrote a true crime book himself, and then he just began interviewing other true crime authors. That's how his started, and he still pretty much has the same format, and it's just him, and he hasn't changed a lick the whole time, and it's wonderful. And then these guys it's pretty much the first one to have co-presenters and really talk about cases in general, as well as authors. You have interviewed authors.
How does it start? Do you guys already know each other?
Oh yeah, we met. What year was it, Aaron?
1993.
Okay.
I was a sophomore in high school.
I was too.
Yeah.
Junior.
You're a junior. I just turned 45 yesterday. How old are you, Steph?
Oh, happy birthday. I will be 45 in January.
Ah, there you go. So you skipped a grade.
I started early.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I did. I graduated 17 and a half.
So back in Kansas City, Missouri, in the Midwest, back in the early 90s, let's just say that was a different time. And I got a job at this mom and pop restaurant called Stevenson's Apple Tree as a dishwasher. And I walked in, and there's this guy standing there with a Psychic TV shirt on. And you got to realize 1993 Midwest, I'm like, what? Who are you?
New friend?
Because that's not the norm, especially back then in the Midwest. So I started talking to Aaron, and what did I ask you, Aaron?
I should have been wearing a Metallica shirt. Is that what you're saying?
No.
No, I think you actually asked me what kind of music I was into, I thought.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
So I told you my favorite band, and then you were like, no way. So.
Yeah. His favorite band
how
is
most good relationships start, though. Lifelong relationships start with a common interest in music and movies.
Something or other.
Yep.
Yes.
And his favorite band was Skinny Puppy, which happened to be mine at the time. So
Wow. bound to be. So your co-workers?
Yeah, we were both dishwashers in this little shitty restaurant.
We were co-sufferers.
Nice.
So now I'm imagining you both standing next to each other at the sinks up to your elbows in suds, discussing whether Carlo Marcello was directly responsible for JFK's assassination.
No, it's funny you say that. We did talk about JFK's assassination.
What
we
the
did.
first night you were washing dishes together?
Not the first night. It was within, I think, a couple weeks.
That's great. Well, it's a subject that actually, I mean, I will confess that
Well, what bigger true crime case, right?
I have only listened to you in the last week.
Yeah.
I will, full disclosure.
No problem.
I've listened.
But you've
listened
heard
to
them
several.
emanating out of my back pocket for many
Secondhand.
I may have done, probably have done without being aware of it. So I listened to, I think, some of the most recent, the Michelle Neurato, if I'm getting her name right, Rebecca Gray, The Vampire of Sacramento, which is crazy case. And I just finished The Unabomber a little bit earlier, but I thought to myself, they must have done a JFK. So I'm scrolling back through 446 episodes because I'm a JFK nut. Lots and lots and lots of books. And I found you episode 8, but I've been listening on Spotify, and Spotify won't scroll back that far.
Oh.
And then I found you on my Apple Podcasts app, but that won't go back earlier than the beginning of 2015. So I haven't, because I thought that will be my litmus test. That will be the bellwether. If they pass muster talking about JFK, then they're okay in my book. But
We can discuss it now. You'll get us live talking about JFK's assassination.
We have to have Tom on for that.
More than
though.
happy.
Savini
Tom
and him.
Savini
They
is,
start talking JFK, forget it.
He's
Just gotta walk
he's
away.
even deeper in it than me. He actually owns a Mamica. Like he
The
actually,
rifle.
yes.
Yeah.
Good conversation. Doug's daughter came to visit, so let's go over Tom's. And of course, they inevitably start talking about JFK. And
He just gets
someone
up.
mentions the gun, and he goes, "You mean like this?"
Point that thing at me. Yeah, I mean, I was actually alive when it happened. But kind of odd because I was in the UK and I was, what would I be? November 63, 8, 9. I can't do maths now.
I can't even.
9.
Don't look at me.
9, just turned 9. So it wasn't making a lot of sense to me, but I got absolutely gripped by the whole thing. And then obviously Ruby killing Oswald and the drama of the funeral turned backwards in the stirrups. Absolutely grabbed
Don't get lost
me.
now. Come on.
I will say this, that all the original conspiracies about that, how is it a magic bullet? How could it have had this trajectory? I watched a guy recreate the shot, and it took him 7 tries before he did it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's actually pretty good for him to shoot through ballistic, bodies with bones in them and get it through JFK and into the guy in front of him when you situate the bodies and positions in the right way. And he was up on a crane shooting down at the same height and everything. And then I, being a gun guy myself, I know that when a loud noise goes off, whether it be firecrackers or whatever, it can echo around, bounce off walls.
Yeah, we live
Sure.
downwind of a gun range. It always
Yeah.
sounds like World War III is breaking
Well,
out.
we always say with the Civil
We would
War
never
will
know.
break out, and we'll say, "No, it's just the
It's
gun
just the
range."
gun range. Yeah.
So I can understand why people heard a gunshot from somewhere else because it could have bounced off a building. I remember, during the Las Vegas shooting, everyone was hearing
Oh, shit, yeah.
gunshots coming from everywhere, but they were really coming from one place. But
Yes.
people were running mad everywhere because they thought there were shooters all around the city, but it's just bouncing off huge casinos,
But the thing for me with JFK, and I think it was, are we getting email? Is that email alerts that we don't want to hear?
Or is that somebody typing in, Justin needs to shut the fuck up about JFK, he doesn't know what he's talking about?
Need to I think close my.
I don't think I closed your email when I was on it. Oops.
Done now. It's it's not about looking in one place. It's not just about the improbability of being able to get those 3 shots off at a ridiculously impossible angle through a tree and over a road sign. It's no matter which thread of the puzzle you tug, none of it makes any sense in terms of a lone gunman story. If Oswald was a lone nut, you'd look at Oswald and you'd see a lone nut. You don't. You see an extraordinarily complicated, weird, and bizarre history and story. For me, you begin, the Zapruder film is the clincher, but is that the one thing the driver of the presidential limousine knows to do as a Secret Service driver is at the first sign of any trouble, any strange noise, anybody doing anything peculiar, you floor that thing and get the president out of there. That's your job. Leave aside for the moment that it wasn't Kennedy's usual driver because he had died of, excuse me, a heart attack at Camp David shortly before the assassination. So it was a new driver.
Down the hole.
But he's a Secret Service driver. That's 101, isn't it? If there's a loud noise, you slam your foot down on that accelerator.
You know, we're never going to get anywhere, right?
But the evidence is right
Can
there.
you cut his mic off, David?
The evidence
No,
is
not yet.
in front of your eyes. When that first shot is fired, the limo slows down almost to a full stop. And it's not until after the kill shot and the driver even takes a look over his shoulder that the limo picks up speed and gets the hell out of there.
It could be just a bad driver. I hate to burst your balloon, but we do have people that fail all the time. But I get you.
Yeah,
I hear you.
Well, it's kind of like the Princess Diane thing. Everyone thinks that was a whole conspiracy, and I just go, well, the driver was probably drunk, and then he's driving excessively in a tunnel, being chased by paparazzi. Shit happens.
It's an extremely heavy vehicle, very difficult to control at speed.
I thought the reptilians killed her. No, it's not.
No, they are.
You're not supposed to talk about the
Oh, they are
reptilians.
I
You're
thought
gonna
the
ruin the new
reptilians
Netflix special.
were- Anyway,
Yeah, sorry.
It's all good.
I mean, I said you can't.
But
Can't even go there. No, stop.
When you did your JFK episode, did you reach any conclusions?
You have to listen.
I can't.
You have to
I have conclusions,
Go for it.
but you won't like them.
Oswald did it.
Oh,
I think there are people who aren't satisfied just being, a social security number. There are people that strive to be greater, and what will make them feel like they have reached a higher place is by doing something dramatic. And I really feel like Oswald, that's what his intention was. I think there was more to it. I wouldn't doubt if people had talked about the necessity of getting rid of JFK, but I feel like this is probably something he thought, if I do this, I'm going to be a hero to my side. And then you have Jack Ruby, who was aspiring to be greater too. And he thought, I'll be a hero if I kill the killer of JFK. I know that sounds simplistic, but sometimes the simplest answer is the correct one. We've had arguments for years about the trajectory, but when you find out that the president was sitting on an elevated seat,
yes.
that changes things. Now, do I think there might have been other people involved on scene? It's possible, and we don't really have any way to know for sure. And one thing that gives me pause, I'll say this, is recently, just today, I believe, 2 men were released who had been in prison for 42 years for the murder of Malcolm X.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, we had an idea for a long time they weren't involved. But when you start thinking about what it means that they're being released and the rumors about NYPD and other entities maybe being involved, that kind of changes things, because that was the time, was it not?
And weren't they supposed to just release the JFK papers and they didn't?
And they didn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Biden said no, not doing it. But is that not partly the family who keep blocking release of information? And I know that they're also sitting on the autopsy stuff. I mean, let's we can start talking about the autopsy. That if there was nothing else weird going on the day or in the history of Oswald, or the fact that Oswald knew Ruby, or that de Mohrenschildt was with Ruby all that time, the autopsy, well, your hero,
Cyril.
Cyril Wecht,
Yeah.
he says if you could create an object lesson in how not to conduct an autopsy, JFK's autopsy is it.
Oh, I guarantee, I 100% agree. In fact, it seems that most of the time when we're all hinging everything on a piece of evidence or an autopsy, that's the one time it's always going to get botched. It's like, it's just, but I'm a big proponent of never assume malice when incompetence is just running rampant everywhere. But in a situation like JFK, you have top officials, you have the most important person on the planet. You think they could do better. You would hope they could do better. So I don't dismiss like that there wasn't a lot of mistakes or cover up. But I just don't always make all the connections or connect, all the dots to this was an inside job, or this was some crazy, I don't know, what was it, Cuban, faction, or whatever the other ideas are of the people that murdered him. I just think that our government is so corrupt that if anything happens, they're never going to let a catastrophe go by without an opportunity. And maybe sometimes they step in and try to do an opportunity here. Maybe they're like, oh, we can't tell the world that JFK is dead yet. We have to do something. And then they back away from that because it's like, okay, we're not going to be able to do this. And I see that more often than not, is our government taking opportunities with every single tragedy we have. And I don't know how that plays out.
Sorry, what do you guys do when you strongly disagree with each other about a case?
We yell at each other like normal people.
Do you, before talking about it,
Yeah,
you sort of talk it out before you?
Sometimes we do. I wish we wouldn't.
Yeah.
Sometimes
It's
I
called
wish
saving the energy for the show.
Yeah. I will say that most of the time, Aaron and I we're not 180 disagreeing. We usually will agree on the basis of the case. We just might disagree about, the sentencing, or we might disagree about what the prosecutor's strategy was, or the defense strategy, more details or the nuance of it, not really 100%. I think this guy's guilty or innocent. There's certain people I think are 100% guilty, and that gets me in trouble sometimes. But
I think was it you, Justin? I won't say it out loud, but I think you and I agree on a very controversial case where.
Oh, I can't.
I won't get into that.
Is it the Stephen
Is it Sunny
Avery one?
Alaska?
Let's debate. Let's go.
I'm gonna piss a lot of people off.
Or is it was it the Sandra?
Yeah, come on,
Bland
Steph.
one?
Say it. Nothing's worse than the Jesus
West
comment.
Memphis 3. I'm very suspicious of Damien Echols. I said it.
Yeah.
Said it. Sorry.
Aaron's on board with you, actually.
Okay, then it was.
No,
Yeah.
I just think that we shouldn't be in a rush to completely say they couldn't have been involved just because the prosecution's whole case seems to have fallen apart.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm not saying they did it. I'm just saying I feel like there was a rush once that documentary came out and they showed that a lot of the damage to the bodies was done by, say turtles or whatever. That doesn't necessarily mean that they were wrong.
Right. Yes. So we are
I-
on the same page.
Yeah. And so I wouldn't go up to them and say, you did it.
Oh, no.
But I would say
I'm a
everyone's
little-
still on the table.
I'm a little suspicious of a lot, not just him, a lot of people involved in that case. And I don't think any of them can be completely ruled out. I really
Right. I
don't.
think just like Justin said, things were botched. And
Yes.
so it's kind of difficult to go back and resort it out. I don't think we'll ever have answers in that any more than we'll have answers in the JFK assassination.
Yeah.
And I get why, Doug,
Unless
you're so fascinated with
unless
that
someone
case.
comes forward and finally spills it,
I think we are getting close to answers in the JFK case, but we won't go back to that.
Did you?
You see, one thing I notice in the way that you guys present, even if you did dramatically disagree about something, because one of the things I really, really enjoy your podcasts, and you are so measured, and you're non-interventional, by which I mean you tell us the story, you present the information to us, and you're capable of saying, you can look at this information from this direction, you can look at this information from this direction. And this direction might lead you to this conclusion, and this direction might lead you to this conclusion. You might think that the preponderance of evidence says you should go this way, but you're, I don't want to say equivocal, but you are very measured and calm in the way that you present the information to us. You don't come on screaming and yelling and tub thumping and saying, it's this, it's this, it's this, and it can't be anything else. And
We're not Nancy Gracing you.
No, you don't. You really don't. And it's that's one of the things I've enjoyed so much about it. As well as a personal thing for me, you have a little bit of music at the beginning and a little bit of music at the end, and no music in between. I love the fact that you don't try and package it. You don't try and sell it to us like it's a mystery thriller or a horror movie, with additional music and sound effects and jump cuts and so forth.
Yes.
I love the fact that you just say, okay, here's what we're talking about. Here's the evidence. You can look at it this way, that way, that way. And in a way, you don't condescend to us. You leave us to make our own mind up.
Well, all of the things that you're saying are the reasons, why they have been doing this as long as they have and very successfully. I mean, the amount of podcasts that have passed my ears, and so many have started out well, and I thought, oh, this is great. This is slightly different, and this is good. Oh no, oh, they're apologizing. Oh no, they're getting big heads. They're getting bigger heads. Oh my God, and it becomes about the host more than it does the podcast, and we're doing trigger warnings all over the place, and or my favorite, we're not going to discuss the details of the crime. Well, what the fuck are you doing a true crime podcast for?
I mean, we discuss the relevant details, I mean, we kind of water it down, but
skip over things or keep apologizing for giving details.
We want the gory details. No, I mean, I do think Steph's right. I don't think you'd be interested in true crime if you weren't drawn to the darkness involved.
I mean, there is a reason why a lot of horror fans are true crime fans and vice versa. I mean, we're weirdos, and I say that in the best way possible. We are interested in the darker sides of things and darker psyches and the reasons for the darker psyches, and so it makes sense. And don't fucking apologize to me when I sought out a podcast about crime, and now you're telling me about the crime, but you're apologizing.
No, Aaron and I don't apologize.
No,
we usually don't even address things. We just jump in. I know I gave a little bit of a disclaimer on like the Richard Chase Sacramento vampire one, just because it's like, this is a little bit more gory than what we normally do.
Babies and blenders. I mean, some ready people for that, I think,
But no, one of my pet peeves, especially with other podcasts, is just get to the point.
Yeah.
And I cannot listen to a lot of podcasts, whether they be comedy or just more commentary, because if you say your podcast is say about Richard Chase
Mm.
and you haven't mentioned him in the first 10 minutes,
Mm.
if you're talking about your cat or how you got your oil changed that day, or
Yes.
this new wine you're drinking, whatever it is, I'm out.
Hear ya.
That's just
I
me.
hear
I'm
ya.
out.
Yep. No, I hear ya.
It's like, get to the point.
Yep.
And so
Absolutely.
because of that, you will never hear Aaron and I drone on for more than a few minutes. We have our announcements we have to make contractually most of the time.
Yeah.
But
Word
yeah,
from our sponsors.
yes.
Were you
Um,
surprised at your growth? Did you, I don't want to say, did you expect it, but did you expect it to catch on the way it did?
I mean, Aaron, do you think like the first 3 to 5 years, like the growth was kind of slow, right? It
Mhm.
wasn't like we exploded. So
no one knew to even look for this kind of thing. That's
no.
the problem.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
iTunes was really the only way that this was getting promoted, and they weren't acknowledging it either.
Right.
So it was just out there.
iTunes didn't even have a
I
true
mean,
crime
even-
category.
It's even there in the name, isn't it? That we still call them podcasts, and they were
Mhm.
called podcasts originally simply because you listened to them on your iPod.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And so when you started out, you could have had no clue as to how this was going to mushroom. I joke now that there will eventually be the last man on earth who doesn't have a podcast.
It's okay. You have a Twitch account. I don't even have a Twitch account.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's got to count for something.
Yeah.
I don't.
They forced us into it. We're like, what's
Yeah.
Twitch? Isn't that for like kids?
We're a
Yeah,
little
but you
convincing.
have a filmography, so it's totally fine.
David and Nathan and Josh kidnapped us and put us in a darkened room, wouldn't let us out until we agreed to do this.
And
Us
that-
Gen Xers.
we hijacked your panel too at Steel City.
There you go.
What's the safety one? I'm being held hostage by. When
Um,
was the explosion, though? Do you think? When was the exact moment that
When
you
Serial
guys-
came out.
God, I fucking hated that.
Really?
podcast. I'm sorry. That dude's totally guilty.
It was 2014, 2015, because after Serial was huge, there was SNL skits about it. And then
was
they were like,
so
if you like,
boring.
yeah. And everyone said, if you like Serial, you need to go listen to these podcasts. And there was only a couple dozen of us around before
Ah,
Serial.
That
So
was it. Does
yeah.
anyone agree with me? Please tell me somebody agrees with me. Because I really thought,
I think I
They-
started. listening
God,
to
did
it
they
and I got
drag
very
that
bored.
out? Like, how many episodes was that?
8 or 10.
Oh,
at least.
it was, that's 7 too many. And the guy, I'm sorry, I really think the guy did it.
I listened to 2 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I listened to all of them. I actually think they don't have a case against him. Although when I was listening to it, I'm like, this isn't even really that interesting. Like
No,
we cover
no.
crazy cases with
Yes.
a hook.
Yes.
And I not to say that anyone's murder, anyone's case, whatever isn't, but it's just like that was just a
Such a
simple case.
basic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know what you're saying.
Hmm.
I felt that way too. And I thought, am I jaded? Am I just jaded? Because I,
Yeah.
have heard so many cases, but I really thought it was very dull. And I thought the guy was guilty. And, I have nothing to lose by saying that. Who the fuck cares? But
No, I've come to the realization that over time, it seems like the people that do well and the podcasts, the YouTube channels, whatever that do well, are ones that sell you on them, not the stories.
oh, yeah.
So when you say, well, I appreciate that you don't go on about yourself when we get into the story, that's not what most people do, because they realize they have to build themselves up to the audience. So now, oh, we have to tune in to see what so-and-so is saying.
Right.
And then they start talking about all kinds of things.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at YouTube channels that have 20 million followers, and literally there's no story to anything that they're doing.
No.
They're literally just walking around and talking about nonsense.
Yes.
And yet that's what people want.
Yes. Yeah. It's bizarre.
But that's not so we can't do that because that's not how we operate, and we're trying to stay true to ourselves.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, and I'm so thankful you have.
So
Really.
you're discussing JFK on your first evening washing dishes together. How does that develop? So obviously, presumably, you discovered that you both already had an interest in, a love of true crime. How does that develop to the point at which one of you says, do you want to do a podcast?
Well, the funny thing is when we discussed JFK, actually I had made a remark to Justin, going, and this is going in a different direction than I go in normally. I had made the comment that there were a lot of people that wanted him dead. So virtually there were many rifles probably pointed at him. They just weren't all there at the same time.
Sure.
So, but when it came to the podcast, Justin had been a juror on a first degree murder trial.
Ooh.
And he had called me up and said, I have learned so much. I have so much to say. I got to figure out how to tell everyone about it. And long story short, I asked him, are you saying you want to start a podcast with me? And he said, sure. Justin is a fly by the seat of his pants guy. So he's all in. He's just like, okay, sure. We're doing that now.
And what do you want to call it? I don't know. Generation Y. Let's
Yeah.
question.
He came up with
society.
that in like less than 12 seconds, I'm sure.
Really?
That's
It was just like,
Fantastic.
That's
and it's
cool.
been difficult because apparently it's the kind of thing that you can't just keep, like there are other podcasts that have a very unique name
Hmm.
and they're fine. Us, there are many shows that have some sort of variation on that.
Well,
Ah.
it
But-
was
but-
interesting though in the beginning because everyone started naming their podcast something with true crime in the name,
Yes.
Yeah.
and that would help them because when you type in true crime,
Yeah.
you'd find them.
Yes.
But now there's 10,000 true crime podcasts with true crime in their name, so now we kind of stand out again.
Yeah,
So
it's
we-
true. It's
you
true.
know.
That was going to be one of my questions,
Yeah.
sort of what I think everyone sort of has like an event in their lives that sort of kicks off the interest in true crime. So for you, were you interested in it before the jury duty, or was the jury duty the thing that opened your eyes?
No, Aaron and I used to do like dark ambient, like dark experimental music together. And it was a side project called Monsters. And in that project, we would sample the shit out of serial killers and horror movies and all kinds of stuff. And we were very much into that. I remember when I was a kid, I saw Richard Ramirez on the TV
Yep.
and I was like, what's going on? And my mom had to explain it to me. So I'd always had an interest or always knew about it. And I'm sure Aaron was very similar because he was a horror movie fan. So,
Yeah,
we-
for me, it was Jack the Ripper.
Right.
It was the Zodiac.
Do you think that's the guy that they just named?
No,
I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
And
I
it's a
think they're
case
off the
I've always-
mark.
Yeah, it's a case
Pardon the
I've never
pun.
really been that interested in
yeah.
for odd reasons. I mean,
Well,
I
you don't like serial
very
killers who
pic-
use guns.
yeah,
do
I'm
you?
very
You're
I'm very
she's
like
purist
I'm
about
very
her serial
particular
killers.
about my murders,
Knives, yes. Guns, no.
Knives are
Are
personal.
you the same way?
Personal murders, up close and personal. Guns are kind of, I mean, if there's other weird shit connected to that, you know what I mean? It might be interesting.
Yeah.
His outfit, is probably the only thing that's, and the letters, of course, were the only things that were like, oh, this is weird and different. But, the walking up to the window and
Yeah.
shooting people, I mean, is supremely fucked up, of course. But,
Well, and there's also
I never
there's
felt
a-
compelled to
there seems to be
follow it
an
much.
arbitrariness in that, whereas I
Mhm.
think we like our serial killers to be deliberate and planned and methodical and
yes.
veering more in the Lecter direction
Yeah.
than
The,
just
the weirder, the more interesting, I
the,
think.
the thing that stood out for me listening to your episode covering the Vampire of Sacramento. Now it's and you made this point superbly well, I think, in the episode. It's a great big headline thing. The Vampire of Sacramento. Dum 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 dum.
Yeah.
This is a guy who is 7 ways out of his
Mm.
head till Tuesday, arbitrarily wandering down streets, trying front doors. And
Yeah.
if yours was the unlucky one, you're fucked. I mean, the blood and the babies in blenders and is horrendous, but it's a mental health issue,
Mm.
not a vampire issue.
Right.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I mean, the guy should have been under lock and key. I mean, I think in a mental hospital
Yeah.
long since. And none of that would have happened. We're all being upstaged by a bald cat at the moment.
Well, and I think you're onto something there, because everybody likes Ted Bundy because he was,
Mm.
you know, concise, calculated. You know, everyone prefers something like that, a John Wayne Gacy. But when it comes to, say, you know, Richard Chase or Richard Ramirez,
Mhm.
these two guys were walking chaos,
Right.
and
Totally.
they didn't have, you know, they didn't stalk their victims for more than moments, you know, and
To me, that's one of the most terrifying things of all. I mean, those are the ones that break into your house or walk through your door, you know,
Yeah.
totally randomly. Just
Ramirez
terrifying.
is especially scary. I
Yeah.
mean, given the fact that he would kind of do rehearsals as well, that he,
Mhm.
you know, he'd wait till you were out and be in your house learning the layout, and then he'd
yeah,
come back. I mean, that level of calculation is terrifying. I think, but it's you call yourself Generation Y, and for me, that it's all, particularly with serial killers, that's always the question:
yeah,
why?
Yeah.
And in the case of Richard Chase, there is no why. It's just, it is, you know.
Yeah. I mean, in that case,
the guy is insane,
yeah.
and this is going to happen.
the
unless you-
details are salacious and interesting, but the why part is there. We know why, because he was very, very, very ill, you know.
Whereas with, like, just listening to the Unabomber, there are a lot of whys at
Mhm.
play in that the hospital isolation and the isolation from his mother, and the genius IQ. There's a that is completely unfulfilled. There's a lot at play with him, and as Steph and I have always said, talking about it, you know, you read the so-called manifesto. I don't disagree with a lot that he was saying.
Well, a lot of people say that. Yeah.
I'm not going
True,
to start
true.
sending bombs
Yeah.
through the mail because of it, but it's rational, and it's thought out, and a lot of it is.
If we didn't
he's
have
right.
you know the murder and
Yeah.
then
The murdering and the lack of showering were the two
that's true.
issues.
That too. Yeah. Yeah.
But he
You
was
did-
said to be
You
a
did the
brilliant
murdering if you
man.
showered
No, he
more often.
was. He was like
And that comes through in the writing.
Yeah.
You can
Yes.
disagree with him, agree with him, whatever, but he's obviously very intelligent.
And maybe one of the
Yeah.
only people to use that phrase in the correct way, which is what it got him
The cake
busted.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no! Eat your cake and have it.
Yeah. He
Yes,
said it the
yes.
proper way. Everyone else says it the
Yes.
wrong way.
Because
You
you can have your cake and eat it. You can have your cake as long
And
as you
eat your
want
cake,
to,
yes.
and then you can finally eat your cake.
But you can't
Once you've
eat your
eaten,
cake
eaten
and have
your
it
cake,
too.
you don't have it anymore.
Yeah.
He said it the correct way round,
Yeah.
and that was one of the things.
Yeah,
that
wasn't it his brother-in-law
that is-
that
Yeah.
read that and went, oh,
his
you know, like
brother?
a
I think, wasn't it?
record
It was
scratch, you know?
his sister-in-law who approached his brother
Yeah.
when she saw the picture. No, the handwriting. She
Yeah,
said,
it was the handwriting. It was
Yeah.
Ted's
they
handwriting.
posted some of the manifesto or something, or one of his letters, and
And
yeah, she was like,
his brother's
dude.
actually saying, no, it's not him. Look, we'll go through this, and I'll prove to you that it's not. Oh shit.
What are the chances of that though?
50-50.
It's just, I mean, I guess I don't analyze Aaron's writing that closely. So if
I think it's linguistics, forensic linguistics is so interesting.
yeah,
The way people use words and write words, and it's fascinating.
yeah.
You guys, how do you feel about unsolved cases? Do you think you're as interested in unsolved cases as solved cases?
I am.
Yeah.
Jack the
We-
Ripper. You have
Yeah.
to be.
I think we both are. You might not hear as much unsolved cases from us because when they're unsolved, there's not as much information,
Right.
and we're not about filler. So it's like, if we can't talk about this for an hour and really dive into details, like we don't want to sit there and just add, just arbitrary opinion to it.
Right.
And so that's, I guess, the problem with a lot of the missing person cases or unsolved cases is we have to hit a certain timeline
Right.
contractually. So it's like, if we can't do that, then we're in trouble.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And for me, I mean, I want to know about the person committing the crime. I mean, that's always been my thing. It's not,
Yeah.
it's not necessarily the gruesomeness of the crime itself, but it's why.
Yeah.
And that's always been the question for me. Who, and why, and how. And as many times, as many things as I've read, as many things as I've listened to, you still never really get that answer with most of them.
Yeah.
Just, you
And
can't quite wrap your head around it.
do you even have the why anymore about serial killers though? Like, I mean, have we figured that out by now?
I mean,
Don't
they're
don't bang
all-
your children on the head.
they're all well, that, yeah, I mean, it's all, they're all combinations. I mean, you can look at a lot of them, and especially the ones who have talked a lot, like Kemper and
Yeah.
Nielsen, and you can get a feel of what exactly is going on there. Not exactly, but you know, is it nature, is it nurture, is it nature and nurture, is it a head injury, is it, you
Yeah.
know, it just, so it's the combinations of things that go
Don't
into
have a
each.
mother.
Yeah, don't have a mother. Always the mother.
For me, it's always the why. The why is
Mhm.
is always the first question and the last question in my head, and it's one of the reasons that I've always been implacably opposed to the death penalty. But one reason in relation to serial killers is don't kill them. We need them there. We want to hear their story. We want to find out why, because if we can find out why, then that might help us to be
Prevent.
alerted to other people who
Yeah.
may be.
I don't know.
I feel like there's a big nature component.
Yeah.
If you read the history of Chevy Chase, there's some good articles out there about it. I wish I could tell you where to go, but he was tortured by his mother.
I had no idea.
So of the, I guess you could say, the celebrities that I've read about, he had one of the worst childhoods, and yet,
Really?
you know, while he was considered kind of a rough dude, he never, to our knowledge, killed anybody.
National Lampoon's Chevy Chase.
Yes.
Great, I had no idea.
Wow.
Well, the guy
Wow.
that wrote the book about psychopaths who took some sort of test. He did the
John Ronson.
Yes, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Who basically was revealed to him that he was a psychopath.
Mhm.
So, you know, there are components that make up a person's psyche that will make you
most CEOs
that
and
will
lots
make
of
you a
politicians,
psychopath.
so
Now, if you add
one or two former presidents.
other things into that formula, you will get a murderer, you will get a crazy person or a bomber or a serial killer.
Because I think it's always a sliding scale of nature and nurture. Just
Absolutely.
we all have a different point on there. And some people you could, you know, tie them to a piano and stick a hose up them and do all that stuff they showed in Sybil all their life, and they never will kill somebody.
No,
Whereas-
it's an interesting point
Yeah.
to talk about Chevy Chase.
I had no idea about
I
that.
didn't know about that,
Yeah.
but it's interesting because I love Chevy Chase. I don't mean to be derogatory about him in any way, shape, or form, but he's not a normal kind of dude.
No, he's a weird dude.
He's kind of crazy.
But he's not a
he's-
serial killer that
but
we
he's-
know of. So
But he's crazy in a wonderful way, and he's made us all laugh a great deal because of it.
Funny Farm.
But
Yeah.
it's almost like okay, he has a fucked up relationship with his mother. Person A has a fucked up relationship with the mother. Person B has a fucked up relationship. Their heads are scrambled because of that. And this person's going to go in this direction and find comedy and
Yeah.
torture himself with comedy for the rest of his life. And this person isn't, because they don't have a sense of humor, but something else is going to go wrong here.
Mhm.
That's going to spiral them off in this direction. Does that make any sense?
So if Dennis Rader maybe went into stand-up comedy,
It would have been worse because I think he would have bombed really badly.
he would have been hooked
Yeah.
off on night one, I
No.
think.
Is that what you're saying?
Which would
I
have
don't know. He could have played
really
Colin
made him more
Robinson in What We
upset.
Do in the Shadows.
But
No,
so-
I
serial
think you're
killers
right.
as-
Because look at
media.
what was it? Jeffrey Dahmer?
Yeah, he had a basically normal childhood up
Yeah.
until like his mom like basically abandoned him. I mean
Bingo.
that's well
Well, you know.
yeah, I mean but was that it's
Dennis
not like that
Nielsen
suddenly turned it
had a-
on, you know what I mean? Like his parents were married and his dad was very
Yeah.
close with him and you know took him out and taught him things, and he was very into science, and then the
Yeah.
parents get divorced, and
Nielsen did not have a
I don't
desperately. I mean, and Brian Masters, if you're familiar with Brian Masters' book on Nielsen, which I think is
best.
one of the best written.
probably one of the
says,
best true
the
crime
best,
books ever. I think.
Killing for Company. He hinges it on Nielsen as a boy being made to go and look at his grandfather in the coffin.
Yep.
To whom he was extremely close, and that was a place that Nielsen never got beyond in his head and in his emotional setup. He never got beyond that moment.
Mm. and the death makeup and the corpse makeup.
Yes.
because he saw him in the coffin. That's isn't that a new one that's coming out now? I just saw documentary, Dennis Nielsen documentary.
Oh,
I think
Like,
so.
oh, fuck,
Yeah.
nothing sacred. Yeah.
That's I think we got a good chat question from
Everybody knows who that
yeah.
Kemper is, and everyone's gonna know who Dennis Nielsen is.
go ahead, David.
Heavy Metal and Booze in the chat just asked, do you believe that today's serial killers are active shooters?
Oh,
I mean that's a spree killer. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Mass
if
murder,
we go off the
murder.
federal definition,
Yeah.
but there is an argument that there was a golden age,
The golden age of serial
golden
killing.
age of serial killers. Has that passed? I know the official figures are always saying seem to be a colossal number of active serial killers at any given moment in the country, but that there seems to have been that period, whether it's because of being
Back
born in the war,
Mhm.
or the post-Vietnam generation and all the psychological mayhem that caused. Are we in a different place now that people aren't serial killing but are mass killing? Or
I mean, it's harder to get away
do you
with
guys
it.
think it's a different thing?
A prolonged killing career, now, because it's so easy to get, so much easier to get caught, you would think.
Yeah, everyone's got a camera, on their
Yeah.
hand.
Yeah.
So, has
And the
spree killing
definition.
taken over?
The definition of serial killer is so vague too. It's
Yes.
at one point it was actually 2 murders with a cool down period in between, and I'm like, that's not. And so they changed it back to 3 murders with a cool down period in between. So
Right.
a mass shooting, well,
That's
there's
just
no
one
cool down
event.
period.
Yeah, that's one event.
And it's very often one grievance. You
Yeah.
fired me from my job, so
Yeah.
I'm taking you all down with me.
But what if you're a hitman
Hmm.
and you got hired 3 times over 10 years? Are you a serial killer now? No.
Like a-
Yeah, it's true.
You
True.
mean like a hitman who might have been employed to be in Dealey Plaza?
Or let's say you don't get along with your neighbor because he doesn't mow his yard, and you're like, I'm going to wipe out him and his whole family.
Right, and that's what would you call that? Is that spree killing? Is that
Yeah,
mass killing? Is that-
let's say the whole family wasn't home that day, so we waited a day and got the rest of them.
Right.
I don't know if I really say
Right.
that's a serial killer.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I do think that should probably be altered.
Yeah.
Because more times than not, there's sexual aspects to serial killers. Would you say that's true?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
There's some sort of drive. I mean,
Yeah.
Dexter was like, the dark passenger, whatever
never
it
saw
was.
that.
My boy.
I'm telling you to watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just finished season 8 today. Again.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm not into the fictionalized stuff, because I just sit there and go, that wouldn't happen that way.
Same.
Yeah.
You ruin it.
Well, that's not about anybody real.
No,
It's made up of
Yes.
real people, but it's
but
not
it- but
real.
it's-
So
yes.
yeah, and there's not a whole lot in there that happens that
No,
wouldn't
and
happen the way it does.
Lecter is kind of a preposterous character, so
Of course he is.
So you go with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, would Pinhead be considered a serial killer?
No, I don't think so. It's interesting because I've said this before that I've obviously spent a lot of time over the years with Kane Hodder, who obsessively records his deaths. He knows Kane, of course, played Jason Voorhees in several Friday movies. He knows exactly how many people he killed. He knows what his favorite kills are.
So weird.
And he's accused Pinhead of being a pussy because he doesn't kill a lot of people. And when he first said this, which I think was we were doing a Q&A together, and I thought, oh shit, you're kind of right, aren't you? Because actually, Pinhead doesn't do a great deal of killing, and he's not the boogeyman. He's not standing in the shadows with the stiletto, waiting to jump you. He's not stalking you. In a way, you're stalking him. That's I've always said you have a lot of traveling to do to get near this guy. You have to discover the existence of the lament configuration. You have to find out where you can get one. You have to go through the bartering process. You have to work out how to solve the damn thing and get it open. Then and only then you'll be confronted with Pinhead, who wants to stop and discuss the weather and the price of fish with you before we get round to the hooks and chains. And then Pinhead's interested in the dirty secrets, in the dark cobweb corners of your head and your heart. That's what's of interest to him. But then I remembered that Pinhead wiped out an entire nightclub in Hellraiser 3. So I
Well, what's
said,
the line? What's the line though? What does he say? You
Time to
summoned
play.
us,
Yeah.
or you called us?
the box, you opened it, we came. So it's
Yeah.
just a simple, okay,
But that's different
you
than
rang,
most
here
of
we
these
are,
other
what can we do
movies.
for you?
Yeah, exactly. It's different than most of these other movies, right?
Yeah, they're like, hey,
It's
you're
almost like
having
you don't know
sex
what
at a
you just
camp.
got yourself into.
Yeah. It's the difference between that and Friday the 13th.
Yeah, you're
where you
smoking
just-
weed and having sex. And
Yeah.
stab you to death.
Yes, it's this. We touched on this in our horror quiz last week, didn't we? In Scream, Ryan's
I'm not very familiar with that movie.
7 rules for escaping a horror movie. And
I'm hearing a lot. I'm hearing a lot of victim blaming here, Doug.
Well,
so I threw the question back to Kane. How many people are in a packed nightclub on a Friday night? Well, I took them all out, boom, just like that. And kind of went, wow. I said, what is that? 300 people, 400 people, 500? I don't know. Who's counting? Who cares, frankly? It's the style, not the quantity. Never mind.
I think you're 6 or 7 on the overall list, though,
of what
Almost
of the kill list.
Oh, wow.
I've killed way more than Freddy ever did.
I don't remember the list, but you're like 6 or 7 overall. I mean,
You're the
out
top
of-
10, man.
Yeah, top 10.
Not good enough.
Kill more.
I'll Google it to make sure.
Who's number 1?
Jason. Up until the new movie, it would be Michael.
Michael? No.
Yeah, he killed like 130 something.
Are we talking like overall the movies? However
you
many
see,
there are?
We
Like,
don't know how many people were in that nightclub that night.
could have been the biggest nightclub in wherever you are. Where were you?
Where
Where did
were
that-
we? New York, I
Oh.
think.
Could have been
I mean,
145 people.
Yeah. You could have hit the button to the
Right.
Death Star.
No, this is not Red Bull. Whoever asked me that, I do not do energy drinks. It's Coke with coffee. It's
Product
delicious.
placement. You could sponsor us, Coca-Cola.
No, don't do that.
Oh, okay.
Diabetes. David, do we want to show people the giveaway for most gifted subs?
Yeah, would you like to Vanna it for a moment?
Go.
So we have a
Take it from our glamorous assistant behind us.
another lanyard from the Paris Manga and Sci-Fi Show. See,
Oh.
why would you be there
Why-
unless Hellraiser was considered sci-fi? I rest my case. Anyway, this lovely lanyard could be yours. And it says actor.
And look, it's even got
got a
sci-fi
sci-fi
written
thing
on the
on it.
ribbon.
So Doug will sign that and send it your way.
Oh wow! So I found the list, and it's quite surprising.
Okay.
So Leatherface has 14.
Okay.
Doug, yourself, you're at 38.
Oh wow.
Well,
But they're obviously not counting the
But-
club.
Yeah,
that's-
exactly. I mean, club by a landslide. Puppet-
that was a considerable river of blood that we saw coming under those doors. That was not like half a dozen people. That was
Puppet
a
Master,
lot.
28.
Who?
Puppet Master.
Master.
Jason, 171. Freddy, 42. Michael, 105. Chucky, 44. And they threw an honorable mention in for Jaws at 20.
Bruce.
Twins.
Hannibal, 4th. Actually, 4. And Silence of the Lamb, 2 kills.
Yeah.
Your boy's got some work to do.
Does.
Who was the 80s butt rock band that had the fire during their show? Was it like Great White
Great White.
or White Snake or something?
It was Great White, wasn't it?
Where all the people died in the
Yeah.
I
nightclub.
think it was Great White.
How many people died in that? Doug, you can claim that was
Yeah.
similar.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep,
oh,
you're gonna claim
okay.
those.
Great White.
I remember
yes.
that. Yeah, a little club and big pyrotechnics and
Yeah, it was messed up.
Yeah.
terrible.
Wasn't that
They had, like-
overseas? That was in like Europe or something, wasn't it?
Or no.
I thought it was in New York. I could be wrong.
Oh no, I think
Oh.
you're right.
Yeah.
I think it was in
just
New
remember-
York, and another one happened like late
Oh.
2000s ish, like 2008 or something, in
Mhm.
somewhere in Europe.
Yes.
There's somewhere where a floor collapsed. Is that a nightclub? I remember
Happens
that.
all the
Yes.
Balconies and everything else. I'm gonna go back to
Yeah.
unsolved things. Not including JFK. For each of you, what case, if you had a choice, would you most like to see solved?
Go ahead, Aaron.
On
It's a
the
hell of a
spot.
question.
I know his
That-
answer.
No, it's really tough. I don't know. Yeah, I have several names in my head. You know, I
Alright.
mean, one day I might think Jean Benet.
Mm,
Another day I might think Kyron Horman.
okay.
And then another day, the Springfield 3.
How about you, Justin?
And Jack the Ripper, presumably.
Yeah.
I'm like about, Heyman Lee or, Stephen Avery, Teresa Hallbach, because I just want everyone to shut the fuck up
Shut the
about
fuck
it.
up. I hear you, yeah. We all happy now.
You mentioned that, I think in your most recent episode, I think, or one of the ones I listened to, you were talking at the beginning that there's a lot of talk at the moment that they may have a route finally to solving Jean Benet
Yeah.
Mm,
because of improvements in DNA techniques, that they may be able to lift DNA where they couldn't before. But also, if I heard you right, you were talking about items recovered that were never properly examined even.
it's not surprising.
Yeah, it wouldn't be surprising at all because the whole investigation
so
was messed up from the
mishandled.
beginning.
Yeah.
You know, it's, as you know, if you start with a false premise and you start going down a path thinking you're on the right path,
Mm,
you'll start missing all kinds of things. Well, they thought it was a kidnapping.
Yeah.
And, there are many people that
trampled
do
all
think it
over
was
everything.
originally supposed to be a kidnapping.
Yeah.
But it went wrong. But yeah, that's just what we don't know. Since we don't really know what happened, all we can do now is presume that we didn't know what we were doing. No one knew what they were doing. So they need to start over and really start re-examining the evidence they do have.
I would definitely, I'd say that's near the top of my list for or unsolved, but Delphi for me is the one that's just, you know, it's incomprehensible to me, that one. And I feel like there's so much that they're not telling us.
Is this the girls on the trail?
Yeah, on
Yes.
the bridge.
And for
Yeah, either they're
that,
not
on the
telling us
hill.
or they don't know.
Yeah, it's,
That's my worry.
yeah, and you
But
think,
it's
you
weird
know,
that
when
they're
it,
not releasing the details of exactly what was done
when do
to the
you
girls.
when do you hear that? You never, what case can you reference where you don't know anything about how they were killed? So you can only think it must be, you know, beyond gruesome.
What does
Then-
that tell you though? I mean, my guess would be they don't have forensic evidence that would tie a person by DNA to the case.
Yeah,
So they have to hold back details. So if they do get someone to talk, they'll tell them something that they never released.
Right.
That'd be my
Yeah.
guess.
Mm.
But I hope I'm wrong. I hope they have more than I think they do.
it just seems so unheard of though, that you don't even know the method. You know, were they strangled? Were they stabbed? You know, we know nothing.
it's like the
Um,
Gabby Petito thing just happened and we know
Yeah.
every single nuance of
Yeah,
that
so
case. 'cause it
quickly.
lasted.
And it's weird because, you know, when that first happened, Delphi, and when they finally released the video and the audio, you think, okay, well, this is good. We got them, right? I mean, this is not going to take long at all. Someone's going to recognize that person right away. You know, you could put a clip of something on the internet, find this person, and, you know, give it a day, and someone will have tracked that person down. How is it possible
Right.
that there is a video and
There are
nobody-
TikToks like that where
Yeah.
people call people out and say, who's in
Yeah.
this video? And they find out the next day
Usually.
at the latest.
Yes.
But this isn't like that. And I bet there's probably someone out there that knows, but they're not going to say anything.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Well, that's the one for me.
It might
That's-
not even be out of loyalty. It might be out of fear.
Yeah, that too.
I mean, look what he did here. You talk, you might be next.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely
Um,
my number one
I was
on
I
my
was
wish list.
I was interested then, Aaron, you made the point with the Jean Bonnet case that the police had the wrong end of the stick at the beginning of the investigation and thought they had the right end of the stick. How often, in your experience of looking at all these cases, how often does the investigation get off to the wrong start or a bad start or a slow start because the cops have an immediate idea in their heads and they start trying to make the evidence fit the plan rather than letting the evidence lead?
Yeah, the numbers would be skewed because Justin and I tend to go with cases that are messed up because it gives us more to talk about. And, you know, I've tried to tell, especially law enforcement who write in, most of whom are very polite. I try to explain that when we cover these cases, we're not trying to say that all of America or England or wherever things operate like this. We're just pointing out the cases that are problems because when we look at where we've messed up, we can make improvements, I would hope. But, you know, really what it comes down to is we just have people that make mistakes or are not good at their jobs, you know, like Justin brings up incompetence all the time. So,
Mhm.
or you have areas of the country that just don't see murder very often. I mean, maybe once every so many decades. They're ill-equipped to investigate those
Not a
cases.
well-oiled machine.
Right.
that
And
takes
that's,
us
I
to-
think that's
yeah.
how people do get away with murder, because I will argue that you always leave something behind. Every single murder is solvable. Every murder is solvable. Or the means there to solve the crime.
There is
In
a trail
lot of
somehow,
cases,
somewhere.
Yeah, in a lot of cases, the means are not there, and you know the brains are not there, and the equipment is not there, and chain of command is not there, and the evidence is there, but can they find it and can they put it together? And that's you know the question.
Well, in 20, 30 years ago, we had one chance to solve a murder.
Mhm.
You had that one chance to investigate the crime scene. Now you have a few more chances because we have DNA and we have other means. But yeah, there's so many times where I'm like, you can't solve for X here because they botched it so bad
Yeah.
that we'll never know conclusively, or just we might be able to figure it out. But
Our understanding of forensics now is so much better that nobody, or you would assume nobody, is allowed to go trampling all over a crime scene. That the crime scene gets locked off and isolated pretty quickly. You would hope.
Well,
these
it's what's
days now that-
supposed to happen, but we know that just,
Yeah,
a lot of
doesn't.
things are supposed to happen and they just do not, quite
And
the opposite.
are we very, very confident that Jack the Ripper will remain? Because he is kind of the great. Steph's very, very meh about Jack the Ripper, but he is like.
I think it's interesting to a degree, but I don't.
But he's like the great, great, great granddaddy of. He's the God Almighty of the serial killers.
Absolutely.
And rather like God Almighty, we don't know whether he's there or not. There's not a chance in hell that we're ever going to conclusively.
Well, not
know.
definitively, no.
We don't know, but I would say, based on the records at the time, I'm not sure we can actually tie that case to someone
Mhm.
the way we can nowadays. Even cases from the 70s, we can look back.
Right.
But that's so long ago. I really wonder. I'm not sure we could actually identify an individual.
Always going to be speculation.
And there's
It-
speculation, exactly. And then you have the core group of, suspects who everybody names and says, well, it's one of these guys, but we
Yes.
don't really know.
I'm going to bring up a case to you. I'm thinking of it. David Hendricks. Does that ring a bell? He was the weird, what the hell were they? Were they Jehovah's Witness or were they Mormons or Mormons, I think. He was the doctor who came up with I don't know if he was a doctor, but he came up with the
Oh.
back brace thing. He was sort of getting a little touchy-feely with the women he was hiring to model the back brace. He leaves his wife and kids.
Is that the Beyond a Reasonable Doubt?
Beyond a
book?
Reasonable Doubt
Right.
book. Yeah.
Which we sharply
Leaves the
disagreed
wife
about.
and kids to
Yeah.
go on a sales call out of town. Calling back to the house. Gee, I can't get a hold of my wife. Hey neighbor, can you go check on my wife? You know?
You mean my
Oh,
wife's
wife
dead?
is dead, Oh my. Would he get convicted? They overturned it
And
two more times.
You think
a
he
trial?
absolutely
Oh,
did it?
100%.
And
We
I,
got arguments about it after you read it? Yeah.
because I don't
I need to
like,
find some
I don't
popcorn.
like circumstantial evidence. And it seemed to me that there wasn't anything beyond circumstantial evidence.
Okay, but that's okay. There was enough there.
But it seemed
A
that
woman's
there
instinct.
was enough
He totally
reason-
did it. My question is,
enough reasonable
to me,
doubt.
to me, that's a dead giveaway when the husband, hey, can you go check on my wife for me? I
Worried
can't get
someone
in
might have
touch with
killed
her. No, I don't say that. I was like,
I know.
to me, that's the dead giveaway. That immediately is the tell for me.
I think it depends on their pattern of behavior. If it's a change in their pattern of behavior, if they're always having someone check on their wife, if they're always in constant communication, then no. But if they've never done that ever,
Right.
and then all of a sudden out of the blue, hey, go check on my wife, then
Right.
abso-fucking-lutely.
Well, what's one for you? What's a tell for you when you're hearing the details of a case and you go, oh, I totally did it.
To me, it's the pattern of behavior, or a pattern of behavior of if they're like a domestic abuser, if there's
Mhm.
like all these issues going on, then I'm like, they probably did it, especially when it comes to their statements to the police. Now, I know people can screw up statements all day long. Hell, I have like severe ADHD. I'd probably give a different statement every time I talk to a cop. That's why I would just lawyer up. Anyways,
I
but
would do the same.
yeah, but when it comes to statements they give, and it's usually, if somebody says, oh, well, I dropped my mom off, but we went to the grocery store first. If they get like a little tiny detail like that wrong, that's fine. But it's when I wasn't with her that night. Oh, I was with her that
Right.
night. And then it's like, screw off.
You mean that night?
Right.
Okay.
What about you, Aaron? Anything that's sort of a tell for you?
Yeah, it's just really paying attention to the details, and definitely a good giveaway is when they're constantly having to try and explain things And they're like, okay, well, I didn't tell the truth then, but I'm telling you the truth now.
Right. We're on the third, fourth, fifth version of the truth.
Yeah, you can't do
Yeah.
that. You need to start with the truth and just hang in there. If you're going to start with a lie, well, when they find you out, coming up with new lies isn't helping you.
No. Now, if you're anything like me, which you probably are, there are certain cases that I can listen to 100 different podcasts about. Every show that comes on, I'm listening to it. Anything that comes out, I'm reading it. Mine would be, probably BTK, John Bonet, Dennis Nielsen, Delphi. But no matter what, Gacy, huh? JFK.
OJ.
Stack of books.
There's nothing to know with OJ. I mean, guilty. But
No, the glove didn't
don't-
fit.
don't-
That's why
Yeah,
they have
the glove doesn't fit my hand.
Another one we've argued about.
And then that fucker gets a show.
I think
If I did it, here's how it happened. Like,
Yeah.
come
If I
on.
did it, was the name of
I
it.
know. Yeah.
It should be an Only in America Part 2 OJ from Don King to OJ.
So what
Jesus.
for you guys are the cases that you can't ever get enough of?
I've never been asked that question. Which one is it for you, Aaron?
You just keep handing them off to me.
Deflection.
That's right.
Because I think everyone brings different details to it, so I like to hear how different people cover it.
Well, I hate to, I hate to keep bringing this up because I
Okay.
know how you react when Doug starts grinning, but I really do watch every special on JFK.
Yeah,
and the last one I
love it.
watched-
Look, I love the JFK stuff, but it will never end if we get.
It will never end. But the last one I
Hey,
saw was trying to explain where one of the bullets went because there was obviously a shot that missed, and they figured out that it hit this street light. So that was a very interesting documentary. It was all about the witnesses and where the bullet went, and it was just interesting. It wasn't trying to solve the whole thing. It was basically what happened to this bullet. And
one-
well,
one
he was
bullet
shooting and
hit
it hit
as well.
the street light.
There's one bullet that hit the curb as well.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, if you watch the documentary, it'll be all explained, but it
This
was
is-
just interesting. Again, it's not trying to explain the whole thing and say how many shooters there were, this and that. It was just basically a shot that Oswald took that hit that light.
maybe
It was cool getting.
allegedly.
We went to see Cyril Wecht do a lecture, and listening to him talk about it was very cool.
Yeah.
That was very cool.
Well, he and it's in. I thought.
And by the
about-
way, he thinks that John Bonet's dad did it.
yes, he does. Yes.
Not kill JFK, kill
No.
John Bonet.
That was Ted Cruz's dad. Wasn't it?
Now we're talking Zodiac.
No, he was
Right.
Cruz's
Oh,
son.
that was hilarious when those memes were going around.
Yeah, that
They
was
they were reaching and everything lined up perfectly.
I think I forgot what I was going to say now.
sorry. That happens.
No, you were talking about Cyril Wecht
Oh, go
Yes,
ahead.
and
he
JFK.
he uses very specifically, and I thought about this in relation to George Floyd's death, because I think if it hadn't been for the presence of mind of that girl to take her phone out and start filming and keep filming, and she didn't just film 30 seconds of it and put it on TikTok or on her Instagram, she kept filming. And she produced that entire record that, that of the minutes and minutes and minutes that went by, and it's a long, long time. My feeling is that Chauvin might not have been so swiftly convicted
Hmm.
if we
No.
didn't have that video. We all got to stand where that girl was standing, and we watched that unfold. And I thought about that in relation to the Zapruder film. Without the Zapruder film, without that close-up that we all know now, that awful close-up of the headshot, the point that Cyril makes about it is that it's a timeline, because you can't argue with the timeline of the film because it's so many frames per second. And although we know that the film was fucked about with, and that's a whole other murky territory before it got published in Time Life, it is nevertheless an incontrovertible timeline. And you can argue them, for example, the magic bullet theory away by the elevated seat. I get that. But you can't argue away the amount of time that this bullet spent moving between two people that were only a few feet away from each other. It's something like 2.6 seconds on the timeline of the Zapruder film. And that represents for me an objective kind of reference that you can place everything against the Zapruder film.
And without it, we would not be talking about it all this time later. At least not in this
We
capacity.
couldn't, because
We would just take.
you wouldn't see that moment of the hands going to the throat, as well as the close up of the headshot, Jackie on the trunk of the car, and
No, everybody would have just accepted what we were, what they were being told at the time. This
the
guy
Secret
did it.
Service's
End of
inactivity.
story.
The president's been shot, and with the exception of one Secret Service officer, nobody moves.
And not to change the subject, but you had referenced George Floyd in that video, and the George Floyd situation was far different than most,
Yes.
just a police shooting, because anyone that doesn't know police officers in America, if they simply if they think there's a deadly threat, if they don't see a deadly threat, they just think there is one, they have permission to use deadly force. And that's actually how they're treated in America. But in the George Floyd situation, it was, this guy's no longer a threat, and we had to sit there and watch for 8 or 9 minutes now,
Yes.
Right.
someone die. So it was a far different situation. But yeah, I just and even when we see videos of police shootings, it's always so quick. It's like, it's hard to pick out all the details. And
Right.
the Zapruder film, it's not it's not high def, but you get the gist of what's going on.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
But I mean, what's wrong?
I'm just raising a technical question. You're still seeing us okay, David, and everything's happening normally and in real time?
Yeah. Yeah, you guys are here, all crispy,
Yeah.
sounding clear.
Because
Our, thing
we just
dropped out.
disappeared off the monitor, so we don't have real time audio. I'm not quite sure why.
Oh,
No, we
It's-
don't have real-time video, but we see
Yeah.
you. We see you.
we
on-
can see you, but
on
everything's
Twitch.
happening on a delay.
Yes, but
down
we're
below
fine.
us.
We're good.
So do we have time to ask you questions?
Of course.
But-
Yeah.
Because
But no, we're good. I mean, we're still on. We're still live, right?
Yeah,
I'm
all,
sure
all
you
good.
get asked a million questions, but my very favorite author, if someone asks me who's living, is Clive Barker.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
I've read almost everything he's put out.
Mhm.
And Hellraiser was one of those things where when I watched the movies, for some reason, the movies hit me in a way that his stories didn't. And that sometimes happens, like with The Shining. That's another one where the film hit me in a way that the book never did.
Mm.
And so in particular, I'm wondering about, if you've had interactions with Clive, I'm sure you had, and also about Hellraiser 2, since it almost feels like there's more movie there that we just never saw.
Oh, that's like four questions in one. there,
Yeah,
I
two,
think.
hopefully,
Um,
just your impression of Clive Barker, and then is
well-
there more to Hellraiser 2 than what we saw?
Well, I'll deal with the first issue first, because I have known Clive for more than half a century. I got cast in the school play at Quarrybank High School in Liverpool, in England, when it was probably 1969, I think. And I walked into rehearsals, and here's this other member of cast in the school play by the name of Clive Barker. So and we were doing independent experimental theatre in Liverpool and then subsequently in London from the early 1970s through until the early 1980s, when Clive started writing the Books of Blood. We ended the theatre company in 1982. So I had been up close and personal to Clive's creative process, both in the plays that we were doing and the stories and so forth that he was writing at the time, and his artwork. So I was very, very close to that process. And I have always, I think, known that he was touched with genius. I think there was always maybe a question mark as to whether that genius was going to get recognized, whether he was going to be able to find his audience. In terms of the theatre work, we really weren't. Well, that's not it's complicated, but we were finding our audience, but not on the level or the scale that we wanted to. We're back. So Hellraiser for me really grew out of all of that process. It was like the culmination of everything that we had been ignored for doing throughout the 70s. So Clive, casually mentioned to me, "Oh, I'm trying to put together a low budget independent British horror movie, and I think there's a part in there for you." And I kind of said, "Oh, that's cool." And the conversation moved on. That was my audition, basically. So
sounds like the inception of Generation Y.
Right, basically, yes. We weren't washing dishes at the time, but we were, we were drinks in hand at a party. Oh, by the way. Oh, really? That sounds good. But if it remains true, I think. But if Clive ever said, I've got something going, do you want to be involved? I would say yes without asking any questions about what it was. That might be to my detriment from time to time, but I would never have hesitated. In the case of Hellraiser, I think I kind of assumed that, rather like with the theatre work, people would go, "Oh yeah, and wander on by." I knew we were doing something good. I knew we were doing something interesting. It was a huge risk to put Clive in charge of it as a director, because he didn't know his way around a grown-up film set. I mean, I don't mean it pejoratively to say that at the outset of Hellraiser, he didn't know what he was doing. That's just a plain statement of fact. He didn't know what he was doing. He did it very well, notwithstanding, and he learned what he was doing as he went along. I had no idea, though, no concept, no idea. I mean, even though, like I was on the poster when Time Out London came out in the week of Hellraiser's release, Pinhead's face was bang, boom on the front cover. I was uncredited. I still thought we might make a bit of a noise and the thing would disappear in a few weeks and everybody would forget about us. Hellbound, wow, yes, there was always going to be more movie than we saw, and part of the reason that we don't is that there was a Black Wednesday or something, some big financial crash, just as the I think just as the budget was being transferred from Los Angeles to London, and just the movement in the exchange rates meant that something like a third of the budget was wiped out, was gone, and New World simply didn't have the money to say, "Oh, we'll make it up." They didn't have it. I think that was maybe a pointer to the fact that New World were about to disappear. In spite of the success of Hellraiser and Hellbound, they went belly up after Hellbound. To the extent that there was even talk about canceling Hellbound, because there was just talk about, well, if this is all the money we've got left, have we really seriously got enough to make this movie? So there's a lot that should have been there and would have been there. In particular, you get that one extraordinary shot of them walking into the maze, into hell, with the diamond spinning in the background with the light spewing out of it. We never explore that any further, really, but that would have been a lot of the second half of the movie, the journey into the labyrinth. There was this whole thing that there was a machine at the center of it that was basically spitting out Cenobites, just spitting out Cenobites, like so many ants being created. And we lost all that. I lost establishing scenes at the beginning of the film. You would have seen Elliot in the street in India, making his way down the street, finding the place he was looking for. And then you would have had the barter scene, that, you know, the traditional Hellraiser barter scene. What's your pleasure, sir? What's it worth? Of him buying the Lament configuration before we locate him in the hut, attempting to open the puzzle. But of course, those two scenes required two sets being built for what basically, you know, one shot establishing shots. So they were taken away. So there's a lot of that. And then I think for me, the problem with Hellbound is that there's so many storylines, and they're all desperately trying to get resolved, even as, you know, somebody standing there with a watch saying, we have 15 minutes of movie left. You're gonna need to hurry up here. And I think that means that ultimately the movie kind of lacks a climax.
Well, I still love the movie, and I love the first one because it's it's almost more of an intimate movie. It's a small scale movie. The second one really overreached, but I still love the movie. I think it has some amazing moments, and the Doctor is just something else. But so I love those two. Those are my two favorites, and I always felt like Hellbound could have used a little bit more to it, because it always felt like there were things kind of missing. But again, maybe it was just, you know, too much bitten off, and like you said, the budget wasn't there to actually make it all come to be.
It's Clive's storyline. Pete Atkins wrote the screenplay, but it's Clive's storyline, and it's inevitable. And this is Clive's imagination at play. You're absolutely right about Hellraiser. I've argued that with Hellraiser, you could take the Cenobites out of that movie entirely, and you have a rather dull but serviceable slasher movie, you know, with Julia looking for victims to feed their blood to her resurrected lover, to bring him back to life and give him skin to put over himself. Frank is hovering over Justin's shoulder there, lighting his cigarette. And you can do all that, and you still have a climax with Kirsty confronting Frank in Larry's skin. All of that remains intact, and it would still be a pretty powerful movie. Clive takes that whole slasher format, and then he just quietly drops these things, boom, into the middle of it, and the movie is completely transformed. Inevitably, and it is very much the way that, and you're right about it being a very intimate movie. Clive has described it as a family tragedy. That he's called it Ibsen with monsters. But inevitably, his imagination now wants to unfold the wrapper, wants to say, okay, these things that appeared in Hellraiser and told you, we're Cenobites, we're explorers in the further regions of experience, because they tell you a lot about themselves in Hellraiser without telling you anything about themselves. You're none the wiser at the end of the film. So inevitably, once you come into sequel, now you have to start saying, well, here's the bigger picture. Here's the big stage. Here's the realm that they exist in. Here's how they function. Here's the big world. So, yeah, Clive overreaching is something that Clive may often be guilty of doing. But I will always give leeway to people who might I wouldn't say fail, because he didn't fail with Hellbound, but might, yeah, overreach, make the canvas so big, make the meal so big it's very hard to eat it all and digest it.
But he can do it because I've read his books, and if you look at Weave World or Imagica, he can fill those worlds. He can do it. And with his books, he doesn't have to worry about budget. It's just the constraints of film and getting a budget. So it's not his failure.
And it's easier on the page. He can do that on the page, because he can take you, it's the way that novels work. You can take the reader inside somebody's head, and you understand the way they're thinking about something. And you can even, as a writer, say, I know this sounds ridiculous, but this is what happened. And you kind of go, okay. But if you just present something on screen that's ridiculous but just happened, the audience goes, that's ridiculous.
Right.
Because you're not in on the secret of it. And I've said many times that Clive had such an awful experience, particularly in post-production on Nightbreed. That's the reason he stopped directing. And that when he's writing or when he's painting, there's no interference between his brain and the pen or the brush. There is nobody leaning over his shoulder saying,
Don't do it like that.
We
Right.
can't afford that scene. We're not sure that that's going to play with our demographic.
He's such a unique voice, though. I think about Lord of
Oh.
Illusions and some of the other projects he worked on, and he's just a unique voice. And so I've always gravitated toward what he's written or what he's filmed.
I don't think it's an accident either that you mentioned Weavewell. That has been talked about for Jesus. I remember when Hellraiser was releasing, there was talk about Weavewell as a TV series. Then it's been a feature film, it's been a mini series, it's been a TV series, it's been blah, blah, blah. It's gone round and round and round. It's never happened. It's so huge. We've only got the avenging angel sitting outside the gates of the Garden of fucking Eden. It's no big deal. It's very, very difficult to bring that to the screen.
This was a question I always wanted to ask Clive Barker, but this is the next best thing right here. So it's a long kind of, you got to listen to a little bit to get to the question. I'm sorry, but the 80s, were a different time. And I know Clive was very outwardly, outspoken about his being gay. And I used to hang out in goth clubs, bondage clubs back then. And I know that he did, stylize the Cenobites after some of the S&M and bondage clubs. And at that same time, you had a lot of large religious groups that were talking about the gay agenda and how evil gayness is taking over and blah, blah, blah. Were the Cenobites the gay agenda, like a tongue-in-cheek, like here's the evil gay agenda coming for you, but if you seek it out, like, am I making a totally weird connection there?
No, because I would say this, with Clive, everything is the gay agenda.
Okay.
And I don't mean that critically. I mean it positively. And what I mean by that is, we touched on this.
I was going to say with Peaches,
yeah,
with Peaches Christ.
Peaches
Yeah.
Christ was a guest on the show, and we talked about this. She focused very much on Julia. And on Julia's masculinity. And we talked about the fundamentally transgressive nature of everything that's going on in Hellraiser. Nothing is right in here. Nothing. Larry's Clive's archetypal, useless, heterosexual, married male.
Yeah.
And there is an element in Clive's writing that if you're straight and you're married and you're a family man, you're a waste of space. And that's Larry. And revolving around him are Frank and Julia. And Kirsty, there's nothing right about Kirsty. She doesn't want to have a relationship with her boyfriend, but she's, kind of close to daddy. Pinhead wears a skirt. It's all leather and muscles up here, and then he wears a skirt. It's partly because in Clive's mind he's a monk, so it's partly a monk's habit. I think it would be wrong to say that there isn't elements of Tom of Finland at work in the way the Cenobites look. He did introduce me to a magazine called PFIQ, because body modification was not as common then as it is now. It was a much rarer thing, and not so widely accepted. PFI stood for Piercing Fans International Quarterly. And this was a magazine devoted to pictures of and articles about people slicing and dicing every available piece of their anatomy. And I do mean every available piece of their anatomy. It was quite eye-watering to look at some of it. I chose not to take the Daniel Day-Lewis, Robert De Niro route and undertake some of this myself to find out what being a Cenobite might feel like. I let my imagination do the walking. So yes, and also I think for Clive, the gay agenda has always been about being the other, being the outsider, being the thing that is going to upset, being the thing that people don't want to talk about, that people do think are evil, much more so than now. Although Christ knows, we still have the fucking Westboro Baptist Church. It's still at play. It has not gone away at all. And I think that allied with Clive with horror, because I think, again, then horror was not as mainstream as it is now. And I think in some ways, I've never had this conversation with him, but I think somewhere in some corner of his mind, though I have no doubt that he's delighted that homosexuality is accepted as it is now, and gay marriage is as accepted as it is now, etc., etc., etc. I have no doubt about that. But I suspect that somewhere for him, there's a trade-off that may have taken the edge of danger and subversiveness out of it.
I mean, that's something we touched on.
Always used to like that idea that horror was something that happened in the dirty corner over there, that everybody else didn't want to know about and didn't talk about, but we all loved being in the dirty corner.
We touched on that exact thing with Peaches as well, that drag work and transsexuals and horror, and it's so accepted now, and it kind of does take away the as you said, the subversiveness and the danger of things. So
interestingly, I know that the one time Clive had this directly as an issue in his work was with In the Hills, the Cities, the short story in the Books of Blood, but also significantly with Sacrament, in which the principal character, is it Will, I think, in Sacrament, is gay and is openly gay, and there are homosexual love scenes. And Clive was called by his editor, and he said it's the only time it happened. And it was quite a kind of around the bushes conversation before we finally settled on, we have a problem.
Mm.
And his solution was that Clive should rewrite it and just make the gay love scenes straight, and make Will heterosexual, and then everybody would be happy. Like he thought that Clive would say, yeah, okay, yeah, I see your point of view. Yeah, we don't want to upset Middle America, so by all means, let's, or the matrons in Kent, in the home counties, perish the thought. Clive actually said, well, if you insist on doing that, then I at the end of this phone call, I will go and tear up my contract, and I will write you a check and send my advance back to you, because you can go fuck yourself, was basically his response. And I think it's HarperCollins, they backed down.
What year was that?
Sacrament, oh God.
Was that, I want to say it was like, was that mid-90s maybe?
I think so. I think so.
It's hard to keep track. He's written a lot of books, but
yeah, he has. I think so. It's a yeah, somewhere around there. I can't remember.
Yeah, we can't have a gay couple, but we can have, demons from hell ripping people apart with chains and hooks and stuff,
That's
So
fine,
weird.
but-
Yeah, babies and wonders. God,
But two men holding hands and kissing each other and declaring that
how
they love
very
each other.
dare you?
Good God,
No.
no.
So do you want to tell everyone who isn't familiar with your podcast sort of when you release shows and your page? I've also been a member of your Patreon since you started your Patreon too.
Thank you. I have a question for you then, Steph.
Oh, for
What do
me?
what do you want to hear more of?
Mm.
Like, whether it be on our Patreon or on our main thing, do you want to hear more mysteries, more murders, more missing persons?
I'm interested in the missing persons to a degree, but as you said before, I mean, we only have so much information. So there's only so in depth you can get with that. We're running out of serial killers to cover.
Had you
there's
ever
only-
heard of Richard Chase before that episode?
Oh yeah, oh absolutely. Oh, I had asked you the question, sort of what kicked you off,
Mhm.
and what kicked me off in 1988, at the age of 11. Is it 88 or 89? Why am I 88? So I was 11. Was the murder of two friends, or the murders of two friends of mine. Got into a car with someone they didn't know very well, and they were 13 and 14, and he took him and a friend took them to his house, chatted for a bit, and then he proceeded to rape and murder them and dump them, wrap them up and take them up to the local woods and dump them. And he got found out very quickly. But our parents didn't talk to us about it. And it sort of stunned the whole community. But nobody talked to us about it. Nobody told us why. Nobody told us, should we be afraid? Should we not be afraid? Why did this happen? Will this happen to us? Will this happen to somebody else? Will this happen to you? So that's sort of what kicked it all off for me. And pretty much since then, there were things like, there were the Unsolved Mysteries books and, the Unsolved Mysteries series that was sort of out around that time. So if it's been out that long. I've been aware of it for that long.
Dateline and Forensic Files.
I mean, yeah, so people, it's funny to see people coming around to certain cases now, like the Dennis Nielsen thing is out now. People are like, oh, I didn't know about this, and the Kemper, everybody sort of found out about Kemper because of
Manhunter.
Mindhunter, whatever it was
Yeah.
a few years ago. And, I had a chapter and verse of all that for ages, all these cases. So that's probably where my interests always are, or with the repeat, the serial killers, because the more fucked up the psychology of the person, the more I'm interested in it. Because I'm my other that in my podcast list, you will find true crime and you will find psychology podcast. That's pretty much what I'm completely obsessed with. And for me, it's not the like I said, the gruesomeness, although that does play a part because it's interesting, but it's the psychology of the person. So I enjoy hearing about what could have happened to this person to have driven them to this point, and what were they thinking when they were doing this, and what were they trying to do, what were they trying to accomplish in their own head. So that's my thing. And I know a lot of podcasts are big on, we want to focus on the victims and we don't want to talk about the murder that much. And I get that, and I totally respect that. And there should be a certain amount of respect paid to the victims, and their stories should be covered. But I'm interested in the psychology of someone who would commit a crime. So
I'm always, I was always interested in how society responds, how the court
Yeah.
systems respond, how it's
Mhm.
investigated, how it's all those things, the why of that. Why did this person walk? Why did this person get found guilty?
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
too. Yeah, the legal aspects of it.
I wanted to ask you quickly about your process because Jesus, I mean,
That's a lot of work,
9
guys.
years, 450 nearly episodes, and you still seem to like each other somewhat. It's a huge workload. I know on your website you acknowledge Stacy and Haley as tireless researchers, and Haley is credited as a PA. But I wonder what your process is, because it's a lot of research, and you do your research. You don't leave stones unturned, it seems to me, and you're effectively doing an episode a week. It's an awful lot. How does that process proceed?
In the beginning, Aaron and I just picked out random cases we thought were cool or interesting. And then we just spend a week or two reading about it, researching it on our own. Then we'd record on a Thursday night. I would take that recording and edit it down and clean it up and release it Sunday. And we did that every week for like years. And I luckily never ate a gun. But Aaron was like, hey, we can do this better. And he started hiring researchers and writers and stuff.
But
And-
it's still a lot to digest and put it.
Oh, yeah.
You seem to have total control over your format. I mean, you're kind of well practiced in it now. But do you discuss the shape of the program beforehand? It doesn't seem to me to be scripted at all. But do you have an outline in terms of talk about this, in the first 15 minutes and this in the second 15 minutes?
No, the key is the research, because that keeps us on task.
Mhm.
Quite often Justin, he's usually one to do it, but we'll wander off and talk about other things. But the research keeps us on point, because the early episodes that you can't find, one of the problems is we'd go off on points and we would come back, but we may not come back where we really should have come back to. So since we're unscripted, we need to have something that keeps the backbone of the show there, so that we don't miss important things we do want to talk about. So thankfully, due to the research and the great researchers we have, it's a rare thing when we've ended an episode and thought, oh wait, we forgot something.
and cover that.
Has
Yeah.
there ever been a case that you guys covered that sort of like made you say, I can't do this anymore? That was, that sort of traumatized you a bit? That stayed with you? No?
No, you always go back and do it again. How we felt about it, that doesn't actually impact when we record again. It's more of a, well, we really should record this Sunday because we missed a day last week, and then we have to do the Patreon episode. Let's get together Tuesday. And so we're on a schedule and we set it each week.
I don't want to say you become numb to it,
Mm,
but you are always trying to figure out a puzzle, as opposed to talking about a gruesome murder.
mhm.
You're actually, I look at it as, well, what are the pieces here that we need to put together?
Right.
And what are the pieces about the crime so we know who actually committed it? And what are the pieces to tell this story in a coherent manner? And
Right.
there's a lot of levels of trying to figure out how we're going to tell the story. And every single time we sit down and go to record, I absolutely say, are we going to do this chronologically? Are we going to talk about the murder first? How do you want to approach it? And then within 15 seconds, we go, oh, let's talk about the murder first, kind of a hook to get them interested. And then we'll go back and talk about all the players and everything.
Right.
You
Mm,
know,
I love the way that you unfold the story. Again, it's a big bugbear of mine. Documentaries that start at the end and then tell you a bit about the middle, and then touch on the beginning, and then go to 3/4 of the way through. And by that time, I've lost track of the narrative. It's the story, the story, the story, the story, the story. Tell us the story, because that's what grips. And I think you're brilliant at doing that. You just let the story unfold, and it doesn't, like with the Unabomber. There's no need to kind of give this any more impetus. It's just, and then on this date, this guy gets this package and this happens. And then this time goes by, nothing happens. Then this guy gets this package. And it's actually that slow drip that becomes the wow of the story. Is just again, really? Again, I mean, I know the story well. And even so, listening to it again, I'm thinking, Jesus, another one, and it's a miracle that so few people were killed in the case of the Unabomber, but more by good luck than anything else. But I really commend you for just letting the story breathe, letting the story tell itself.
There are so many things about your podcast that have kept me listening, from the very beginning. And I'm grateful for your calmness and your critical thinking skills, and no hysterical moments. So many of these podcasts get very hysterical, and the hosts get very hysterical. And I know we were talking before we went live about YouTube wars and creator wars and things like that. Obviously, I'm not asking you to name names, but have you had issues where other shows have tried to throw a bit of a wrench in your system?
Never.
No? But I would imagine, because
I will say this, that we used to respond to it a little bit. And, when you stop responding and you just keep putting out another show, it's funny, it's what you don't say that people judge you on.
Yes.
And after a while of people, crapping on us or attacking us or trying to cancel us, whatever, when you don't respond anymore and you're just like, we're going to put out another episode next week, so keep talking, we're working. They don't do it much anymore. We're sort of above it now.
No, good, and I'm grateful for that, because I see, and it is why I have unsubscribed to a few a podcast because they want to get childish and start throwing out weird insults about other
And make themselves the
hosts and
star of
make
the stars
themselves
of the
yeah.
show.
It's like I'm not necessarily, although you do have people you warm to. Like like I said, getting on here with you, I feel like I've known you guys.
Yeah.
Because you've been a voice for so long. But so to a degree, I do want to hear Justin and Aaron talking about a certain case, but
Yeah.
you never get like, you never turned into me monsters, like a lot of the other people have.
And
if-
go on.
Well, I was going to say, since you're subscribed to our Patreon, are there things that you've heard on there that really have, impacted you in some way? Because we do some things a little differently on
Yeah.
Patreon.
Yeah.
I think we cut loose a little bit more on Patreon.
Yeah. which is cool. And I don't get to hear all of the Patreons, I'll admit. I fall behind with a lot, but I always wanted to throw my support.
Yeah.
You guys, my measly few dollars a month, but happy to just show you that I appreciate you guys.
Well, and I
so
just
much.
can't stand watching YouTubers most of the time because every single one's the same. They're like, "Hey guys, welcome to the channel," and blah. And I'm like,
Oh God, don't even get me started on that.
flashy editing.
That's all it is. It's like, hey guys, welcome to my channel. They all have that generic like annoying internet customer service voice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But it works.
It
I was
apparently.
Seems
they
to.
all
was
have
telling-
millions.
I was telling Doug, when I've gone down this rabbit hole in the YouTube rabbit hole, but apparently there is huge messy drama in the knitting community on YouTube.
all the Karens and Bettys going at it.
Like, there's like young people
Yeah.
knitting too. Like there's like knitting groups and knitting
and
channels.
there's a lot of guys taking up the knitting, which is causing a lot of consternation in
Oh God.
I
in
haven't touched it
knitting
because I'm like,
circles.
I can't afford any more time spent on the fucking
People arguing
YouTube.
about knitting.
Yeah, but it's apparently pretty nasty.
Pretty vicious.
I
Seems to
may
be.
have, I'm like, I'm trying to get him to dip into it, so I don't have to. But
Knitting from hell.
yeah, but
It doesn't.
Golf
It
when
doesn't
I-
matter. You could be
my
in a
mum was
dog
doing it.
rescue group, and
Yeah.
or whatever. It is,
yeah,
people are
there's-
just
there's
mean.
all
You could have a
kinds-
different opinion on like what kind of chocolate chip cookies better, and then suddenly like people are like
well,
dossing your
Chewy Chips
internet.
Ahoy, obviously, no.
Steph, we all know it's the Subway cookie.
Is it really?
Oh,
I
please.
almost got Subway today. Almost.
I got
almost.
Moe's today. Welcome to Moe's.
That's a step up from fast food.
We nearly got through a show without talking
No, we talked about food at first, didn't we?
We did.
We did.
It's our.
But
What,
anyway,
Aaron's
we
all
probably
blurry.
wanna,
Aaron's
to
getting all
our
max
blurry.
headroom.
Yes.
I know I'm disappearing.
Fading
Fine.
away.
I need to
I'm
call
turning
the
into a
X Files
pumpkin
right
now.
now.
Our Zoom keeps going out too, so I think
Yeah.
someone's trying to tell us something.
Yeah.
The,
We
the
probably should-
YouTube community heard you talking shit about
Yeah,
knitting.
see, I'm-
Yeah.
Like just unsub.
Yeah.
Well, if people want to find us, it's Generation Y Podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts, and our website is Gen Y Pod. Most of our social media handles are Gen Y Pod, and I think our
WHY.
and our Patreon is Gen Y Pod also, right, Aaron?
No, Patreon is Generation Y,
Generation Y.
but our TikTok and our
Oh, you
Twitter
guys-
are
you
Gen
guys
Y
are doing
Pod.
doing the TikTok now?
Yeah, we're doing the
I
TikTok.
can't go
Yeah,
there.
we
I
definitely
can't.
are on there, so
Oh.
check it out.
Steph and Doug, we're gonna be on TikTok very soon.
No.
Are we?
Yes.
And if you think YouTube is vicious, try TikTok.
We're just gonna we're gonna throw some clips on there.
My daughter always sends me TikTok stuff, and I just refuse to even download the app. I just won't go there. It's all everybody doing these stupid like
We're not doing that.
nonsense.
It's-
Yeah.
What
but
is that?
There's like different parts of TikTok though. Like right now I'm stuck in like astrology TikTok, cat
Ooh.
TikTok, and cooking. And we both know I don't cook. So I don't know how I made it
You
there.
don't cook, right?
Because I was watching Gordon Ramsay videos for like an hour one night, and that algorithm is now stuck until I go and find something else.
Yeah, I'm
I s-
always crying over like animal transformations and stuff on my my Instagram discovery page.
Like a little
It's
pug losing like 40 pounds and
like
then
cat, finding like homeless cats in the street and then like nursing them back to health. Like I'm
God,
bawling my friggin' eyes out all the time over this stuff. But yeah,
it's a
I have
whole
to-
new side to you. that
I
you
have to
can not
cleanse.
aware.
I have to. Well, I'm not gonna cry in front of everybody. It's like, I had to come downstairs last night and I was crying over a dog who was in a rescue from a puppy mill.
Why did
It's
you have to
like,
go
oh,
downstairs?
You don't need to be upset and wonder why I'm crying. It's okay. I got over it. I had to come down and clear myself off and go back
I'm
up.
on the ADHD neurodivergent TikTok right now. It's all just people with OCD and ADHD
Oh God,
and
yeah, I
anxiety
can't.
and stuff.
Oh.
Yeah.
Huh.
I can't.
I'm
Can't
kind
do
of
it.
glad I haven't made it to that side yet.
Yeah.
I'll
yeah.
just be up all night.
There aren't the hours in the day.
No, there's not. I'm cool with my. Well, I am a little disturbed with myself for letting myself get into the YouTube rabbit hole, but
You can't get out now.
I can't get out now.
No.
Oh.
You're here
And not
forever.
until that woman gets arrested and taken away. I will rest them. I will wrap up. Yeah.
It's called
bad.
Dexter.
But anyway,
Yay.
guys, it's your last chance for gifted subs and French. The French?
I'll make
Paris, the Paris
Paris.
manga sci-fi lanyard of Doug's.
I'll make one final plea to you both to unmask Garth Brooks as the serial killer we all know he is.
Do you guys know about that?
Where was he on that fateful day when JFK was shot? That's all
Right.
I'm saying.
Your mom's house podcast, which is Tom Segura and his
Yeah.
wife, they're constantly roasting Garth Brooks and are convinced he's a serial killer. So check.
He
that
has
out.
to be. Just watch it
Yeah.
when you two get a free moment. Watch his Facebook video on
His
YouTube.
first Facebook video.
His first Facebook.
Keep in mind, this was like 8 years after Facebook was already out. So
Yeah.
that
it's the creepiest thing
Yeah.
you've ever seen. Then look at the comments underneath, which is packed with
Where are the bodies, Garth?
let the families go, God.
The families need closure.
We'll look
Run
into
away,
it.
Trisha.
Yeah.
Look for the Patreon commentaries soon, I guess.
Oh, awesome. Great. Be happy.
It's never
Well-
metalheads or horror movie fans that are the serial killers. It's never.
No, it's people
No.
that look like Dennis
No.
Rader.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's going around measuring people's grass
Yeah.
and not the kind you smoke.
Nope.
Probably wouldn't have murdered anybody if he did that. But anyway, thank you guys so
No
much. Like I
problem.
said,
Yeah,
it was
been
purely
great.
selfish on my part wanting to talk to you guys, and it suddenly popped into my head like, yeah, I could probably ask to talk to them, and
Invite us back anytime.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
The honor
Yes,
was
and
ours.
It has been great, and as I say, I've only come lately, but I will be continuing to listen.
Awesome.
Cool.
Yes,
Play
Thank
him
you.
some choice episodes, Steph.
definitely. Well, thank you guys very, very much. And I look forward to your future shows, and
Yay.
give me a yell anytime.
Will do.
It was great to hang
All
out.
right.
Thanks,
See you guys.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
David, are we hanging?
you want to hit us with the peace and pain, Doug, and send it out?
I guess so. Well, we
Oh yeah, the subs. We were tied between Haha
Okay.
Stretchy and Koala at 5 apiece.
koala again, 5 apiece. So what do we do?
Don't know. Are we off? Or are we still live?
We're still live.
Oh, okay.
Right.
I don't know if they're both in here. We could do like a mystery question.
Nah,
Koala
we'll
in
deal
here?
with it.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll
We'll
figure it
deal
out.
with it. Let's say goodnight.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
We'll deal with
Okay.
it. We'll surprise someone.
All right.
All right.
Well, thank you for watching, everybody. And
Thanksgiving
now-
next week, so
yeah,
we won't be here.
no show next week for Thanksgiving. We'll be back the following week. So have a good Turkey Day, whatever it is you do for your Thanksgiving. Do it well, and we'll be back in 2 weeks' time. So peace and pain.